The death of Moses was more than the end of a man's life. It marked the close of a prophetic era, the conclusion of 40 years of miracles, rebellion, and divine encounters in the wilderness. But it was not the end of God's plan. The moment Moses took his final breath on Mount Nebo, something profound began. A quiet yet thunderous transition unfolded, one that would launch a new generation into destiny. What followed after Moses' death was not grief alone. It was movement acceleration shock. Because in just a short span of time, 7 extraordinary events took place, each one a signpost of divine momentum. Deuteronomy chapter 34, verses 5-6 states, "So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, and he buried him in a valley. But no one knows his burial place to this day." The mystery of Moses' burial remains unsolved, but the mission he carried did not die in the desert. It was transferred, and it exploded into motion. This is the story of what happened next. This is the untold momentum behind the book of Joshua. These are the 7 shocking things that happened right after Moses died. Let's begin. Shock number 1, immediate divine directive to Joshua. As soon as Moses passed, the spiritual climate among the Israelites shifted dramatically without any pause for elaborate ceremonies or extended periods of sorrow. Instead of lingering in mourning, God directly addressed Joshua, bypassing traditional leaders. Joshua chapter 1 verse 2 confirms, "After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spoke to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, saying, 'Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, you and all this people, to the land which I am giving to them, the children of Israel.'" Deuteronomy chapter 34 verse 9 declares, "Now Joshua the son of Nun was full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moses had laid his hands on him." This was no spontaneous choice. Joshua's rise was the culmination of decades of preparation in the shadows of Moses' towering presence. He had accompanied Moses up Mount Sinai, stood guard at the tent of meeting, scouted the promised land with courage, and remained steadfast when others faltered in fear. His faithfulness had been tested in the crucible of service, and now, without warning, he was thrust into the role of Israel's leader, not through human election, but through divine impartation. This was a spiritual transference marked by Moses laying hands on Joshua, endowing him with the spirit of wisdom. The transition was not merely positional, but profoundly spiritual, ensuring the mission of God continued without interruption. One leader's death did not halt the divine agenda. Instead, it propelled a new vessel into prominence. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 1 affirms, "To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven." Psalm chapter 75 verses 6-7 explains, "For exaltation comes neither from the east nor from the west, but God is the judge. He puts down one and exalts another." God's choice of Joshua was deliberate, bypassing human conventions like tribal councils or popular votes. The baton of leadership was passed directly from eternity's hand, underscoring the urgency of the divine mission. Isaiah chapter 55 verse 1 proclaims, "So shall my word be that goes forth from my mouth. It shall not return to me void." The promises spoken through Moses now flowed through Joshua, illustrating that God's plan transcends the lifespan of any individual. We often assume loss halts progress, but divine purpose endures beyond any individual. God seeks readiness through willingness, not perfection. 2 Timothy chapter 2 verse 2 instructs, "And the things you have heard from me, commit these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also." Joshua's elevation was not a reaction to crisis, but the fruit of long preparation. God had shaped him in private through years of obedience, observation, and loyalty for a public role that would alter the course of a nation. This seamless transition sets the stage for the extraordinary events that followed, each one a testament to God's unrelenting purpose. Shock number 2. A divine assignment beyond human capacity. Imagine stepping into the role of Israel's greatest prophet, tasked with leading over 600,000 men alongside women and children, across a raging river into enemy territory with no military experience to lean on. This was Joshua's reality. Yet God's charge was nothing short of staggering. Joshua chapter 1 verses 3 to 5 declares, "Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you, as I said to Moses. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you." God did not call Joshua to merely maintain the status quo of wilderness survival. He commanded him to conquer fortified cities, defeat armies of giants, and claim a land filled with hostile kings, a mission that seemed impossible for a man whose primary role had been serving Moses. God's words carried a divine certainty, speaking of victory as if it were already accomplished. Romans chapter 4 verse 17 explains, "God who gives life to the dead and calls those things which do not exist as though they did." The assurance was not rooted in Joshua's qualifications, but in God's presence. Exodus chapter 33 verse 14 confirms, "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." This promise was a continuation of the covenant God had established with Moses, now extended to Joshua. The mission was daunting. Jericho's walls loomed large. The descendants of Anak towered as giants, and multiple kings stood ready to defend their territories. Joshua, a former assistant with no record of leading battles, faced a task that defied human logic. Yet God's call was not about Joshua's ability, but about divine empowerment. Zechariah chapter 4 verse 6 states, "Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord of hosts." Joshua chapter 1 verse 9 commands, "Have I not commanded you, be strong and of good courage? Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." This divine directive required faith over fear, trust over preparation. The scale of the assignment, conquering nations with no prior experience, underscored that God was not asking Joshua to rely on his own strength, but on the one who promised to go before him. This moment resonates deeply with us today. When God calls us to tasks that seem insurmountable, we often hesitate, feeling unqualified or overwhelmed. Yet God's call to Joshua reveals a timeless truth. He equips those he appoints. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 24 assures, "The one who calls you is faithful, and he will do it." The mission entrusted to Joshua was not meant to crush him, but to showcase God's power through his obedience. Ephesians chapter 3 verse 20 declares, "Now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us." This divine empowerment prepared the ground for the unified response of the people, setting the stage for the next shocking event. Shock number 3. Unprecedented unity and loyalty. Replacing a figure as monumental as Moses, who had confronted Pharaoh and mediated between God and Israel, could have sparked division or doubt. Yet the response of the Israelites was nothing short of astonishing. Joshua chapter 1 verses 16 to 18 records, "So they answered Joshua, saying, All that you command us we will do, and wherever you send us we will go. Just as we heeded Moses in all things, so we will heed you. Only the Lord your God be with you, as he was with Moses. Whoever rebels against your command shall be put to death. Only be strong and courageous." This was not mere compliance, but a fierce commitment to unity and obedience, with rebellion punishable by death. The new generation had witnessed the consequences of their predecessors' disobedience. Korah's rebellion swallowed by the earth, and an entire generation perishing in the wilderness for their unbelief. Numbers chapter 32 verses 11 to 13 explains, "Surely none of the men who came up from Egypt shall see the land, because they have not wholly followed me." So the Lord's anger was aroused, and he made them wander in the wilderness chapter 40 years. These memories forged a resolve to avoid the mistakes of the past, uniting the people around a shared urgency to enter the promised land. Hebrews chapter 3 verse 19 states, "So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief." Hebrews chapter 13 verse 17 instructs, "Obey those who rule over you, and be submissive, for they watch out for your souls. Let them do so with joy and not with grief, for that would be unprofitable for you." This was not blind loyalty, but alignment with God's appointed leadership. In a theocracy, obedience to divinely chosen leaders channels divine purpose. 1 Corinthians chapter 1 verse 10 urges, "Now I plead with you that there be no divisions among you, but that you be perfectly joined together in the same mind and in the same judgment." The Israelites' commitment challenges us to consider our response to godly authority. Unity under leadership, even when uncomfortable, often paves the way for breakthrough. The wilderness had taught them the cost of division. Now they stood ready to follow Joshua with unwavering resolve, setting the foundation for God's next miraculous act. Shock number 4. The miraculous parting of the Jordan. The crossing of the Red Sea was a defining moment in Israel's history, a spectacle of divine power that liberated them from Egypt. Yet with Moses gone, God performed another breathtaking miracle to affirm Joshua's leadership and signal his continued presence. Joshua chapter 3 verses 15-17 recounts, "And as those who bore the ark had come to the Jordan, the feet of the priests dipped in the edge of the water, for the Jordan overflows all its banks during the whole time of harvest, that the waters rose in a heap very far away, and the people crossed over opposite Jericho. Then the priests stood firm on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan." This was no mere repetition of past wonders, but a deliberate act to establish Joshua's authority in the eyes of the people. Joshua chapter 4 verse 14 declares, "On that day the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they feared him as they had feared Moses all the days of his life." The parting of the Jordan was a divine endorsement linking the miracles of the past with the promises of the future. The Red Sea had marked deliverance from slavery in the east. Now the Jordan's parting in the west signaled the threshold of their inheritance. This was not just about crossing a river, but about legitimizing Joshua's leadership. Unlike Moses, Joshua had no burning bush, no plagues, no thunderous Sinai encounter. Yet in this moment, God granted him a sign that no human counsel could replicate, cementing his role as the chosen leader. The miracle carried deeper significance. It was not a spectacle for its own sake, but a confirmation of God's active involvement in Israel's mission. Mark chapter 16 verse 20 confirms, "And they went out and preached everywhere, the Lord working with them and confirming the word through accompanying signs." The Jordan's parting was a tangible demonstration that the same God who led Moses was now leading Joshua, ensuring continuity in his divine plan. What makes this event even more profound is the requirement of faith before the miracle. Joshua chapter 3 verse 13 explains, "As soon as the soles of the feet of the priests rest in the waters shall be cut off." The priests had to step into the floodwaters carrying the ark before the river parted. This was a test of obedience, demanding trust in God's promise before any visible evidence appeared. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 6 states, "But without faith it is impossible to please him. The river did not part for spectators, but for those who moved forward in faith, bearing the presence of God." This act of obedience was a powerful lesson. God's miracles often wait for our first step. 2 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 18 affirms, "For not he who commends himself is approved, but whom the Lord commends." Joshua's leadership was not validated by titles or popularity, but by God's unmistakable power. This miracle was a public declaration that the divine mission had not ended with Moses, but was advancing through Joshua. For us, it serves as a reminder that God confirms his chosen leaders through his power, not human mechanisms, and often requires us to act in faith before we see the outcome. This extraordinary event set the stage for an even more startling encounter that would redefine the mission ahead. Shock number 5. The heavenly commander's arrival. As the Israelites stood on the brink of battle, poised to confront the formidable walls of Jericho, Joshua experienced an encounter that shifted the entire paradigm of their mission. Joshua chapter 5 verses 13-15 recounts, "And it came to pass when Joshua was by Jericho, that he lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, a man stood opposite him with his sword drawn in his hand. And Joshua went to him and said to him, 'Are you for us or for our adversaries?' So he said, 'No, but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come.' Then Joshua fell on his face and worshipped." This was no ordinary figure. Joshua was not confronting a human warrior or even an angelic messenger, but the commander of the Lord's armies, a divine presence many scholars believe to be a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ himself. This encounter was a seismic shift, revealing that the battle for Jericho was not merely a physical conquest, but a spiritual war governed by heaven's authority. Exodus chapter 15 verse 3 declares, "The Lord is a man of war, the Lord is his name." Ephesians chapter 6 verse 12 explains, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places." The commander's arrival made it clear that the struggle ahead transcended earthly strategies and required alignment with divine purposes. When Joshua questioned whether this figure was friend or foe, the response was profound. "No, but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come." This was not a neutral bystander or a supporter of Joshua's agenda. The commander came to take charge, reminding Joshua that he was not the ultimate general. 2 Chronicles chapter 20 verse 15 proclaims, "Do not be afraid nor dismayed, for the battle is not yours but God's." This moment redefined the mission victory would come, not through human strength but through submission to God's leadership. The commander's instructions further underscored the spiritual nature of the encounter. Joshua chapter 5 verse 15 records, "Then the commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua, 'Take your sandal off your foot, for the place where you stand is holy.' And Joshua did so." This command echoed God's words to Moses at the burning bush, signaling that Joshua stood on sacred ground. His immediate response, falling on his face in worship, demonstrated humility and surrender. James chapter 4 verse 7 instructs, "Submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you." Before any sword was raised or battle plan devised, Joshua had to relinquish control, recognizing that the true victory belonged to God. This encounter teaches us that spiritual victories begin with surrender, not strategy. The battle for Jericho was not about military prowess, but about aligning with heaven's agenda. Romans chapter 8 verse 31 declares, "If God is for us, who can be against us?" The commander's presence was a guarantee of divine reinforcement, but it required Joshua to lay down his assumptions and pride. For us, this moment challenges us to trust God's leadership in our battles, recognizing that His plans supersede our own. The Israelites were about to face formidable enemies, but this divine encounter assured them that the battle was already won in the spiritual realm, preparing them for the unexpected shifts that followed. Shock number 6. The cessation of manna. After crossing the Jordan and standing in the Promised Land, the Israelites faced a subtle yet profound change in their daily existence. Joshua chapter 5 verse 12 states, "Then the manna ceased on the day after they had eaten the produce of the land, and the children of Israel no longer had manna, but they ate the food of the land of Canaan that year."
For 40 years, manna had been a miraculous provision appearing each morning like dew, requiring no toil or planting, just faith to gather it. It was a daily reminder of God's presence and care, sustaining a nation through the wilderness. Its sudden cessation was shocking, not announced by fanfare or divine proclamation, but marked by silence. The people woke to find no manna, their hands empty, and confusion rippling through the camp. Why would God withdraw such a tangible sign of His faithfulness? The answer lies in the new season they had entered. Having tasted the harvest of Canaan, they no longer needed wilderness sustenance. This was not a withdrawal of God's provision, but a shift in its form, signaling a transition from survival to stewardship. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1 defines, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." The end of manna was not a punishment, but a promotion, calling the Israelites to a new kind of faith.
In the wilderness, God had provided effortlessly. In Canaan, they were to partner with Him through sowing, reaping, and building. This shift required maturity, responsibility, and trust in God's ongoing provision even when it looked different. Philippians chapter 4 verse 19 assures, "And my God shall supply all your need according to His riches in glory." The cessation of manna teaches us that God's provision evolves with his purposes. We often cling to familiar blessings, panicking when they change, but God uses such moments to draw us into deeper dependence and partnership. The Israelites had to learn that the absence of manna did not mean the absence of God. Instead, it marked their readiness to thrive in a land of promise where faith would manifest through action and stewardship. This pivotal change prepared them for the final, most counterintuitive command, which would test their obedience in an unprecedented way. Shock number 7. Mass circumcision before battle. As the Israelites stood in enemy territory within sight of Jericho's imposing walls, they had momentum, unity, and God's promises. From a military perspective, this was the moment to strike, capitalizing on their morale and the element of surprise. Yet God issued a command that defied all strategic logic. Joshua chapter 5 verses 2-3 commands, "At that time the Lord said to Joshua, make flint knives for yourself, and circumcise the sons of Israel again the second time." So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the sons of Israel. This directive was staggering. Circumcision would render the entire male population, Israel's fighting force, physically vulnerable for days, unable to defend themselves or attack. With no fortifications, no reserve troops and enemies nearby, this act seemed like strategic suicide. Yet the command was non-negotiable. Joshua chapter 5 verses 4-7 explains that the generation born in the wilderness had not been circumcised, having grown up outside the covenant ritual established with Abraham. Before they could claim the land, they had to bear the mark of belonging to God. This was not merely a physical act, but a profound spiritual realignment. Zechariah chapter 4 verse 6 reiterates, "Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord of hosts." Psalm chapter 20 verse 7 declares, "Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we will remember the name of the Lord our God." God was emphasizing that victory would come not through human strength, but through covenant identity. Joshua chapter 5 verse 9 states, "Then the Lord said to Joshua, this day I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you." This act was a spiritual cleansing, severing the shame and bondage of their past and preparing them for their divine inheritance. The circumcision teaches us that God often calls us to surrender our strengths before granting victory. It was a reminder that the battle belonged to Him, not to human might. For us, this challenges our desire for quick triumphs without sacrifice. God's ways often require us to lay down our plans, timelines, and resources to align with His purpose. This act of consecration set the stage for the miraculous fall of Jericho, proving that obedience, not strategy, unlocks divine breakthroughs. In conclusion, Moses was gone, but God was not. The death of Moses marked the end of an era, a chapter defined by unparalleled miracles, divine revelations, and the forging of a covenant nation in the wilderness. Yet as his silhouette faded into the horizon atop Mount Nebo, the divine narrative did not pause, it accelerated. Deuteronomy chapter 34 verse 10 confirms, "But since then there has not arisen in Israel a prophet like Moses." Moses was a singular figure, a man who spoke face to face with God, who wielded a staff that parted seas, and who stood as a mediator between a holy God and a rebellious people. His departure could have signaled the end of Israel's story, a moment of paralysis or despair. But God's purpose is never confined to the lifespan of one individual, no matter how great. The banks of the Jordan became the threshold of a new chapter, where divine promises surged forward through the obedience, courage, and faith of a new generation led by Joshua. Each of the 7 events we have explored, divine succession, audacious assignments, unified loyalty, miraculous signs, heavenly leadership, shifted provision, and covenant renewal, stands as a testament to God's relentless advance. The immediate call to Joshua revealed a God who prepares his servants in the shadows for moments of divine elevation. The impossible mission entrusted to him showcased a God who calls us to tasks beyond our capacity, not to overwhelm us, but to demonstrate his power through our trust. The unified commitment of the people underscored the strength of aligning with God's appointed leadership, a lesson forged in the crucible of their ancestors' failures. The parting of the Jordan was a divine signature, affirming that the God of Moses was the God of Joshua, unwavering in his commitment to his people. The appearance of the heavenly commander shifted the battle from earthly to spiritual, demanding surrender to God's authority. The cessation of manna marked a transition from dependence to partnership, calling the Israelites to a mature faith. And the mass circumcision before battle was a bold declaration that victory comes through consecration, not human strength.
Romans chapter 8, verse 31 declares, "What then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us?" This question reverberates through the ages, challenging us to see our own seasons of transition through the lens of divine purpose. The story of Joshua and the Israelites is not a distant historical account, but a living message for anyone standing at the edge of their own Jordan. Are you in a season of loss where a mentor, leader, or familiar provision has been removed? Are you facing a task that feels insurmountable, a call that seems beyond your ability? Are you grappling with uncertainty, wondering if God's plan has stalled? Hear this. God has not stopped. He is just getting started. The same God who parted seas and rivers, who raised up Joshua after Moses, who led his people into the promised land, is at work in your life. His purposes do not falter with the passing of a leader or the shifting of circumstances.
They advance through the obedience of those willing to trust him. These events carry profound lessons for us today. God prepares successors, ensuring his mission continues through faithful servants he has trained in the quiet moments. He does not pause his plan even when grief weighs heavy or the world seems to stand still. He elevates the obedient, choosing those who have proven faithful in small things for greater responsibilities. His miracles, whether parting rivers or silencing fears, validate his messengers and confirm his presence. He fights for his people, taking charge of battles we cannot win alone. His provision adapts to our seasons, calling us to grow and partner with him. And his call to consecration reminds us that victory requires surrender, aligning our hearts with his covenant before we see the breakthrough. This narrative is a call to action. If you find yourself in a season of transition, do not let fear or uncertainty hold you back. The Jordan awaits, and God is ready to lead you across. Engage with this story, let it stir your faith, challenge your perspective, and inspire your next step. Share it with someone standing on the edge of their own promise, someone who needs to be reminded that God's plan does not end with loss, but begins anew with obedience. Reflect on what these events reveal about God's character and his work in your life. Are you willing to step into the floodwaters, trusting that God will make a way? Are you ready to surrender your plans to the commander of heaven's armies? Are you prepared to embrace a new season of provision and consecration, even when it feels unfamiliar? The story of Joshua is a vivid reminder that God's promises are never buried with a prophet. They are carried forward by those who dare to trust, obey, and move forward. As you stand at your own crossroads, know that the God who led Israel into Canaan is leading you. His purpose is unstoppable, his power is unmatched, and his presence is unwavering. Step boldly into your next chapter, for the one who calls you is faithful, and he will do it.